Hi everyone, I'm Lori, and this is my persuasive speech. I'm here today to talk to you about gun violence. Gun violence in the United States is a major problem. And year to date, we have 26,000 gun deaths and 390 mass shootings. And with 5 months still left to go in the calendar, that's astonishing. Gun violence have claimed the lives of more than 1,000 children this year alone, including the most recent school massacre in Texas that claimed the lives of 19 elementary students and 2 teachers. This shooting forever refuted the notion that the best way to prevent gun violence is more good guys with guns. As armed and trained police waited outside the school for over an hour, prioritizing their own safety as an untrained 18-year-old boy slaughtered children with his freshly purchased AR-15. This is just one of the many high-profile incidents in recent years, many that occur within our schools and place of worship. The United States has a unique relationship with guns and gun violence compared to that of the rest of the world. The Second Amendment to our Constitution declares that a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of all people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. However, there is much debate over the precise intent of this amendment and the wording of a well-regulated militia. However unlikely it is, the founders ever imagined the deadly capabilities or the easy access of modern assault weapons and other guns when they wrote these amendments into our Constitution. During my speech, I will provide evidence that supports my position that we must solve our gun problem. I will describe how bad our current situation is. I will explain the gun control policies that we should adopt. And finally, I will share with you some of our current proposed legislation and how you can get involved. But first things first, I want to start by declaring my support for responsible gun ownership. I'm from a small town in the Midwest, and both of my parents and much of my extended family have served or are currently serving in the military. But for those who aren't, they are avid hunters and outdoorsmen. However, things have gotten out of hand. And even though only 30% of the population owns a gun, there are now more guns in the United States than people. For every 100 people, there's 120 guns. This corresponds with the gun-related death rate. That is 4 times more than the rest of the world. Mass shootings are uniquely an American problem. In 2020, 45,000 Americans died as related of a gun-related homicide or suicide. And this figure continues to grow year over year. It has increased 43% since 2010. And with no end in sight, guns are now the top cause of death in American children. And even though most Americans are like me and are supportive of responsible gun ownership, that doesn't mean we can't tell when a current system is broken. Now that I've explained to you why the current situation is so bad, I will explain the current set of gun control policies that are ineffective and a few key gaps in the current policy before looking at what we can do about it. Some of the gaps in the existing gun control policies are bans on assault-style weapons and high-capacity magazines. Both of these items allow murderers to kill multiple people in less time. They were illegal in the United States from 1994 to 2004. And while the assault weapon ban reduced mass shootings by 37% and deaths by 43% while enacted, but since it has expired, the two have increased substantially, with shootings increasing 183% and death increasing 239%. Another gap in our current policies are background checks. Background checks can prevent people with violent histories from obtaining guns. However, most states use only a very basic background check, and there's loopholes in them that excludes privately sold guns, online sold guns, and some guns that are bought at gun shows, which account for 20% of all guns that are sold. While expanding background checks won't catch all potential mass shooters, a recent study from 2020 found that states with more expansive background checks reduce the odds of mass shootings by 60%. Another gap in our current policies are the red flag and mental health restrictions. Red flag laws can allow petitions to the court to temporarily remove guns from people who may be a threat to themselves or others. Family members, doctors, local law enforcement are often aware of a shooter that is at risk or shooting or a suicide well before it occurs. Mental health evaluations can be a strong part of a background check process. A recent FBI study determined that the average shooter will start displaying concerning behavior up to a year before an attack. Now that you better understand some of the gaps in our current system, let's turn our attention to some proposed legislation that might be able to address these problems. The Biden administration recently signed H.R. 7910 into law, otherwise known as the Protecting Our Kids Act. This is huge. This is the first major gun policy legislation passed in the last 30 years. This is making steps, but it's still not enough. The U.S. House of Representatives recently passed H.R. 1808, which would reinstate the ban on assault weapons, which are the most common weapon type involved in mass shootings. And you can get involved by reaching out to your state senators, encouraging them to support the House bill, and supporting pro-gun control candidates in your 2022 elections with your vote and your donations. If you're looking for more ways that you can get involved and you can make decisions, I have this handout for you. Today, I've explained how bad the gun violence situation is in the United States. I've identified key issues with our existing gun control policies. And finally, I've reviewed some proposed legislation to close in those gaps. We owe it to our children, to our family, to our friends and our communities. We owe it to everyone we've lost to never allow another mass shooting through inaction. Thank you for your time and your attention regarding this very important matter.